object-oriented programming language. These are different words that we have discussed in the last session. Is this meaning of all these words clear here? Along with these words, I wrote one more name there. What was the name I wrote? I wrote something called as what? Platform independent. Platform independent, machine independent, architecture neutral language, different words. So what do you mean by this platform independent or machine independent or architecture neutral there? When you are writing a Java program, you can write the Java program in one machine and execute the program on any machine in the world. You can write the Java program in one machine and execute the program on any machine in the world. So irrespective of the machine, the architecture, the platform, you can execute anywhere. It is your decision. Am I clear here? But it is not like C language. C is machine dependent. C language is machine dependent. What do you mean by machine dependent? In which machine you develop the program, there only you'll be able to execute the code. In other machines, you'll not able to execute the code. Am I clear here? You'll able to execute the code only in that machine where you have developed it. Now let's understand why C language is machine dependent and why Java is machine independent. For that, you to understand a lot of words there. Let's look into all those words there. Now we are learning Java language. There are so many languages: C, C++, .NET, Python. Big list is there. But is this development of applications happening only 2020? No. We have been developing the application softwares long back. 50, 60 years back also development was happening. But that time we don't have C, we don't have Java, no .NET, no Python, no C++, nothing. Then how is it? That time also development was happening, and that time development was happening with the help of a language called as machine language. Machine language. You can call it as machine language, you can call it as a binary language, you can call it as a low-level language, what you can call whatever you want. In this language, this was the only language available that time. I'm talking 50, 60 years back there. This was the only language available that time, and application development was happening using only this particular language. Am I clear here? But how do you write the code here? In this low-level language or binary language, binary means what? 2. We use only 2 digits, either zeros or ones. The programs in the machine language are developed with the help of zeros and ones, with the help of binary digits, with the help of binary digits. Am I clear here? We are developing the applications in the machine language means we are writing the code with the help of zeros and ones. The entire program has to be written with the help of zeros and ones. Like this is lies only 100000101 like this. The entire code has to be like this only here. This is how the code will be developed. Seeing the code is damn easy. Reading is also simple only. Writing the program only in the form of zeros and ones is difficult job. I want to display hello guys, good morning. This is what I want. Hello guys, good morning. If this is the output I want, if I want to display hello H, then what? I don't have a character called H in binary language. Machine language doesn't have H. You have to write H also in this what? Binary format only. E also in binary format, L also binary format, O also binary format, space also binary format. Everything should be specified in binary format only there. So writing the code will be a little bit difficult for people, but there is no other option. This is the only option available. You have to write everything in the form of binary digits only, bits, zeros and ones. Now, after you write a program there, you need to execute your code or not? After you write your program, you need to execute your code. To execute your code in a machine, there's so many things available. We have a hard disk, we have a processor, we have motherboard, we have RAM, we have monitor, we have keyboard. In your system, who is responsible for doing the execution? Is the question clear here? In your system, who is responsible for doing the execution? Is it clear here? Is the question clear here? You have to respond first. In your system, who is responsible for doing the execution? The only one fellow who can do the execution of your programs in your machine is your processor. No other fellow can do the execution. Hard disk and RAM are storage devices. Monitor is a display output device. Keyboard and mouse are input devices. Processor is the only one fellow who can do the execution. So we write a program in machine language and I give the program to the processor present in my machine. What will the processor do? The processor in my machine is going to take this particular code, understand them, execute them. The processor present in my machine can understand binary language. The processor present in my machine understands binary language, machine language. So the moment I give the program to the processor will be able to understand my code, they'll execute and give the output to you. You get the output. But as a programmer, you tell me, writing the code in the machine language is easy or difficult? Because everything that you want as output, you have to convert into binary format and write. So it is a little bit difficult. And as a programmer, we do not want our task to be difficult. We want our task to be easy. We want our task to be easy. We want our task to be easy. So what they have done is they have stopped using the machine language and they started using a language called as assembly language. Am I clear here? They stopped using machine language and they migrated to assembly language. In machine language, the development is done with the help of what? Zeros and ones. But in assembly language, the development is done with the help of small instructions. Like if you want to add two numbers, you have an instruction called ADD, SUB, MUL, DIV. These are all instructions there. Like this. A lot of instructions are there. And these small instructions, what you are seeing there, they are called as mnemonics. M silent, mnemonics. Mnemonics. Zeros and ones are called as bits. These instructions are called as mnemonics. If you are writing a program in machine language, the development will happen with the help of what? Bits, binary digits. But if you are writing a code with the help of assembly language, then we take the help of what? Mnemonics. Now you write a program in machine language or you write a program in assembly language. After the program is developed, the program should be given to the processor only. That is the only one fellow who can do the execution of your programs. So when I write a program in machine language and give it to the processor will be able to understand my code and execute the code. You get the output. But when I write a program in assembly language and give it to the processor, the problem is what you know here. The processor present in my machine understands machine language, but they don't understand assembly language. There's a communication problem. Now, you all speak English. I speak English. Whatever I speak, you will be able to understand. Guys, are you understanding what I'm speaking? So whatever I speak, you understand and you follow. But imagine I start speaking English and imagine I know only French. I know only French. You know only English. I cannot speak English. You cannot speak French. Is the point clear here? So I start speaking in French. Then what will happen? You will be able to listen to me. You will be listening to me, but you will not able to understand what I'm speaking. Then the purpose of this class, this course all becomes useless. You will not able to understand what I'm speaking because the language which I'm speaking, you do not know it. Am I clear here? So how Praveen then? Now what I do is I put one more fellow in this meeting who can speak both French and English. You know only English, I know only French. But I'll get another fellow who can speak both French and English. Who can speak both French and English. Am I clear here? Both French and English. Why, Praveen? Because when I speak French here, that fellow will able to listen what I speak here. He'll able to understand. He'll convert that French to English and tell you. So I can tell that fellow as a translator. That fellow is a translator. What is he doing? He's translating French to English. Why is he translating French to English? Time pass? No. If you are able to understand French language, I do not require that fellow only. Because you do not understand what I am speaking, so I am making that fellow convert my statements from French to English so that you understand what I am speaking. Now I keep on speaking in French language there. Assume I speak 100 statements. I speak 100 statements. Then that fellow my translator has to translate what? My translator has to translate what? All the 100 statements. But my translator will tell, Praveen, you told 100 statements. From that 100 statements, I am translating only 99. One I am not translating. I asked why you are translating only 99, why you are not translating the 100th one, why you are giving discount there. And that fellow will tell, Praveen, you told 100 statements correct only. But out of these 100 statements, only 99 statements are correct statements. Only 99 statements are correct statements. Remaining, that one statement which you spoke last one is invalid statement. It is invalid statement. Then what is the point of translating a invalid statement? There is no point in translating invalid statement. You got the point here? So that fellow is definitely a translator and is doing translation also. The fellow is doing translation also. But before doing translation, what is happening? He is what? Verifying whether my statements are valid or not. So every translator is going to perform two jobs. Any translator has to perform two jobs. One is translation. But before doing translation, they will do verification also. Am I clear here? First verify the code is valid or not, and then do translation. I am explaining a story of financial English there, but the same thing happens in your programming language also. We are writing a program in assembly language, and this program has to be executed by processor. Processor understands only machine language. So what you should do? You have to translate the program from assembly language to machine language. Then only the processor will be able to understand the code and do the execution there. And we have a translator whose name is called as assembler. Assembler is a translator. So when you write a program in assembly language, give the program to the assembler. What will assembler do? Assembler will take the program, verify whether the code is valid or not. Verify whether the code is valid or not. If the code is valid, then what? It will do the translation. Otherwise, no translation. If it is invalid, translation will not happen. Am I clear? Assembly language. So earlier development was happening only by using machine language. Then because the development is time consuming, difficult, people wanted an easy task, so they moved with assembly language. And maybe some of you have learned this in academics also. You might have called it as some processor called 8085, 8086, 80357. These are processor names. That is nothing but your assembly language only. But as a programmer, we want our task to be still more easy, still more faster. So people stopped using assembly language also now, and they use what? They use something called as high-level languages. C language, C++, Java, .NET, Python, they all come under this high-level languages. They all come under high-level languages. Am I clear here? They come under high-level languages there. Now, writing a program in high-level language is definitely easy compared to assembly language. There is no doubt. But when you write a program in a high-level language, execution must be done again by same fellow processor only. There is no change there. You write a program in machine language also, execution is done by processor. You write a program in assembly language also, execution must be done by processor. You write a program in high-level language also, execution must be done by processor only. There is no change in that one. But processor understands what language? Only machine language. So here directly execution is possible. Here execution is not possible directly. We require a translator, and the translator name is assembler. The same way here also we require a translator, and we have a translator called something as interpreter. We have a translator called compiler. These two are translators. Assembler will translate the code from assembly language to machine language. Interpreter and compilers are translators, which will translate the code from high-level language to machine language, so that your processor can understand, execute, and give you the output. Now, both are translators here, but there is some small difference between interpreter and compiler there. Praveen, what is the difference between interpreter and compiler? That you need to understand there. Something important for you as a programmer there. Praveen, what is the difference here? Assume I'm writing a program and I write some 10 lines of code. I write 10 lines of code. So this is some line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5. I'm writing multiple lines of program there. I wrote some 10 lines of code, assume. This is my program which I am writing there, and like this. Now, when you are writing a program, is there a chance of doing mistakes or not? Obviously, there is a chance of doing mistakes. In line 3, there is error. In line 6, there is error. In line 9, there is error. I have made some mistakes in these lines. This is my program. This is a program developed in one of the high-level language, C, Java, some language, high-level language. Now, this program I give to the interpreter. What does the interpreter do? The interpreter will take this program, read the first line, line 1. So this is a translator, and any translator has two jobs: first verification and then do translation. So interpreter will verify whether line 1 is valid or not. Valid, translate this line 1. Then go to line 2, verify it, is it valid or not? Valid, translate. Then go to line 3, read it, verify it, is it valid or not? But line 3 is having error. Line 3 is having an error. Line 3 is having a error. So what will interpreter do? It will verify valid or not, invalid. So the interpreter is going to stop at line number 3 only. It will not go to line number 4, because this interpreter, which is checking the code, does not have memory. It cannot remember. The moment it goes to line number 4, it forgets what happened in line number 3. The moment it goes to line number 5, it forgets what happened in line number 4. So it cannot go to line number 4 because line number 3 is having error. Why they cannot go to line number 4? Line 3 is having error. The moment they go to 4, they forget what happened here. But 3 is having error, and the program should not have errors for execution. So what does the interpreter do? The interpreter is going to verify this line. Because the line is invalid there is error, it is going to stop at line number 3 only. Until you don't resolve the problem in line number 3, it is going to stop at line number 3 only. It will not go to line number 4. Only when you resolve the problem here, it is going to verify once again. And what? If it is valid, do the translation and then go to line number 4. 4 is valid, translate. 5 is valid, translate. 6 is invalid. So what? Stop there only. Stop there only. It will not move to line number 7. The interpreter does not have memory. It cannot remember. Only when you have memory, you can remember something. This interpreter does not have memory. It cannot remember anything. So it will stop at line number 6. And when you resolve the problem in line number 6, it will verify it. It will translate, then go to 7. Valid, verify it. So it is valid, translate it. Line number 8, valid, translate it. Line number 9, error is there. Again, stop it. There is no option here. The moment error occurs, it has to stop. That's it. It cannot move forward there. So line number 9 is invalid. It will stop there. You verify, rectify the problem. Then it is again going to verify it, valid, then do translation, then go to line 10, valid, do the translation, end of the program. End of the program. That is how the interpreter is going to work. Line by line. Am I clear here? Now the same program I give to the compiler. The second translator, compiler. What will compiler do? Compiler also will take the program, read the first line. Line 1 is valid, translate. Line 2, valid, translate. Line 3, error is there. This compiler fellow has memory. It can store something. Interpreter is something like Gajni. They cannot remember. The moment they go to the next line, they'll forget. Compiler is not like Gajni. Compile has memory. It can store data. It can remember data. So if any error occurred in line number 3 or anywhere, what will compiler do? It will take the compiler will take the details of this error which occurred in line number 3, store in its memory, and go to line number 4. Am I clear? The compiler is going to take the details of this error in line number 3, store in its memory, and then go to 4. Because it has memory, it is able to store it. Go to 4, valid, translate. 5, valid, translate. 6, error is there. Take the details of this error in line number 6, store in the memory, go to 7. Verify it, validate. This is also valid. Translate 7, translate 8. Line number 9, verify it, invalid. So take the details of the error in line number 9. Take the details of the error in line number 9, and then go to 10, verify it, valid, translate it. End of the program. After reaching the end of the program, now your compiler is going to tell what here. Hey compiler, error occurred at line number 3, error occurred at line number 6, error occurred at line number 9. Compiler has all the details. So all the errors will be shown to you at one time. All the errors will be shown to you at one time. Am I clear here? All the errors are going to be shown to you at one time. Now, if they ask you what is the difference between compiler and interpreter, many people tell what dear. Interpreter will check the code line by line. Compiler will check the code, the entire code at one time. But it is not like that. Both interpreter and compiler are going to check the code line by line only. There is no difference in that one. Then what is the difference? The difference is memory. Interpreter does not have memory. It cannot store anything. So the moment error occurs, it will show you there only. But compiler has memory. It can store the details and show you at one time. So what is the difference between interpreter and compiler? Interpreter does not have memory, whereas compiler has memory. Is the point clear there? Interpreter does not have memory and compiler has memory. That is one point. Second one. This is something like I have to travel from my home to my office. There are two ways to travel. One is my car, two is a RTC bus. There is a RTC bus which will go from my home to my office. Both will take me from my home to my office. My car also, RTC bus also. But which one is faster? My car is faster. Why, Praveen? Bus is big, no, bus will go fast, no. Problem is not fast there. The problem is the bus has lot of stops in between. The bus has lot of stops in between. Yes or no? But my car doesn't have any stops. I just start here and keep on driving and only I stop at my office. So my car will be faster than the bus because there are no stops. Interpreter is like bus, compiler is like car. It has lot of stops in between. There are no stops here. Interpreter is slower, compiler is faster. So there are two differences between interpreter and compiler. What are the two differences here? One difference is with respect to the memory and one difference is with respect to the speed. Interpreter does not have memory and it is slow. Compiler has memory and it is faster. That is what the difference between interpreter and compiler there. Am I clear here? So now people have earlier developed application by using machine language. They feel difficult, so they migrated to assembly language. That also they feel difficult. Now we are using high-level languages there. Is the story clear here? Machine language, assembly, and high-level languages there. Now, if you are writing a program in C language, you have to save that file in your system or not? Every file that you save in your system is going to have some extension there. Every file that you are going to have in your system is going to have an extension. Do you have some songs in the system? What is the extension of the songs there? .mp3. What is the extension of videos? Video files, movies? .mp4, AVI, DAT. What is the extension of images? JPG, PNG, GIF, BMP. Lot of extensions are there. And every file in your system is going to have some extension. .doc, .txt, .pdf, .html, something you're going to have there. If you are writing a program in C language also, it is going to have some extension. The extension of the C language program will be .c. If I write demo.mp3, it is a audio file. If I write MP4, it is a video file. If I write DOC, it is a document. If I write something called GIF, it is an image. Like that, by seeing you understand all those things there. This is a C language program. C language programs will have the extension as .c, demo.c. Demo.c is a C language program, so it will contain what? Obviously, it will contain what? C language instructions only. Is this C language instructions high level instructions or low level? They are all high level instructions, and they cannot be understood by your processor. They cannot be understood by the processor. Am I clear there? They cannot be understood by the processor. So what we do is we give this C language program to a compiler. We give this C language program to a compiler. What will this compiler do? The compiler will take the C program, read the C language instructions, verify whether they are valid or not. Verify whether they are valid or not. If the C language instructions are valid, the compiler is going to generate one file called demo.exe. Who will generate that file? Compiler. Compiler will take the C program, read the instructions, verify whether they are valid or not. If they are valid, the compiler is going to generate .exe file which will contain machine language instructions. This is what going to happen in C language. Demo.c, I explained the entire part there, listen carefully there. Demo.c is a program developed in C language which contains C language instructions. These C language instructions are high level instructions. They cannot be understood by the processor. So we give the C program to the compiler. The compiler will take the C program, read the C language instructions, verify whether they are valid or not. If they are valid, the compiler is going to generate .exe file which will contain machine language instructions. This is what going to happen in C language. Now you got a .exe file containing what? Machine language instructions. Now let me explain you why C language is machine dependent language. Why C language is machine dependent language. I have a machine here. This is my machine. And every machine is going to have some processor. Every machine is going to have some processor. Am I clear there? Every machine is going to have some processor. This is the processor of my machine. This is the processor of my machine. Let me have one more machine also. Machine 1, machine 2. I have two machines. This is machine 1 and I have machine 2. I have two machines, machine 1 and machine 2. Am I clear here? Machine 1, machine 2. Now, two machines are there. Both the machines have some processor. The special point that you understand is every processor is going to have some instructions and that instructions are going to be unique. Every processor is going to have some instructions. Every processor is going to have some instructions. Every processor is going to have some instructions and that instructions are going to be unique there. The machine 1 processor is having some instruction called as like this. Assume these are the instructions of the machine 1 processor. Machine 2 also has some instructions like this. These are the instructions of machine 1 processor and these are the instructions of machine 2 processor. Now I am developing a C program. Listen carefully dear. Demo.c is a C language program developed in C language. I developed the program in machine 1. Now I give the C program to the compiler. What will compiler do? The compiler will take the C program, read the instructions, verify them. If they are valid, the compiler is going to generate one file called demo.exe. Demo.exe. Is the point clear here? It is going to generate a file called demo.exe. What will demo.exe contain? Machine language instructions. Who is generating this .exe file? Compiler. In which machine? Machine 1. So the .exe file is going to contain machine instructions of machine 1 only. So this is how the code is going to be available in your .exe file. Am I clear here? These are the instructions of what? .exe file. Who generated this .exe file? Compiler. In which machine? Machine 1. So after I get this .exe file, I give this .exe file to the machine 1 processor. Machine 1 processor will read it, understand A. Can they understand A? Yes. Can they understand yes? Okay. Can they understand D? Yes. Can they understand F? Yes. Can they understand G? Yes. Can they understand H? Yes. Can they understand J? Yes. Everything here they can understand. They'll execute the code. They give you the output. .exe file is generated in machine 1 and you're able to execute. You get the output. After getting the output, what I do is I take this .exe file. This .exe file, no? I take this .exe file from machine 1 to machine 2. I give this .exe file to my machine 2 processor. But my machine 2 processor will not be able to understand A, they will not understand S, they don't understand D, they don't understand F, they don't understand this .exe file. They do not understand this .exe file and they cannot execute. The execution of this .exe file is machine dependent. In which machine you have compiled, there only we can execute. Other machines you will not able to execute the .exe file. That is the reason you call it as what? Machine dependent. If you really want to execute this C program in machine 2 also, then don't copy what? .exe file. Copy .c file here. Recompile the program. Again, you'll get one more .exe file. That you execute here. In which machine you want to execute, in that machine only you need to compile. So why you call C language as machine dependent? Because execution of the C program is dependent on the machine where it is compiled. In which machine you compile, there only you'll able to execute. In other machines, you'll not able to execute. Am I clear here? That is what happening there. That is the C language story. Why C language is machine dependent. Now we'll come back to our language. Java is machine independent, platform independent, architecture neutral. How, Praveen? If you are writing a Java program, the extension of the Java program will be .java. C language program is .c. Java language extension is .java. And if you write a Java program will contain what? Java language instructions only. Is this instructions high level or low level? They are also high level. They cannot be understood by your processor. So what we do, we give this program also to the compiler only. Java program also will be given to the compiler. What will compiler do? The compiler will what? Take the Java program, read the Java language instructions, verify whether they are valid or not. If the Java language instructions are valid, then the compiler is going to generate one file called .class file. In C language, the compiler will generate .exe file. In Java language, the compiler will generate .class file. And what does this .class file contain? They contain something called as, you can call them as bytecode instructions, or you can call them as, I prefer the second one, special Java language instructions. They are also Java instructions, but special. I explain the Java story here. Listen, demo.java is a program developed in Java language. It will contain Java language instructions, and they are high-level instructions. They cannot be understood by the processor. So we give the program to the compiler. The compiler will take the Java code, read the instructions, verify whether they are valid or not. If they are valid, the compiler is going to generate .class file. The .class file is going to contain special Java language instructions, or you can also call it as bytecode instructions. Now, this special Java language instructions present in your .class file cannot be understood by the processor, cannot be understood by the programmer also. The only one fellow can understand your .class file. The only one fellow can understand your .class file is your JVM, Java Virtual Machine. What will JVM do? The JVM will take the .class file, read the special Java language instructions, and convert them to machine code. What is happening in C language and what is happening in Java is similar only. But in C language, we are converting the C code to machine code in one step only. But in Java, we are converting Java code to machine code in two steps. First, we are converting Java to special Java, then special Java to machine code. This step is called compilation step. This step is called execution step. Compilation is done by compiler. Execution is done by JVM. Compiler will convert Java language instructions to special Java language instructions. JVM will convert special Java language instructions into machine language instructions. Now, I am writing a Java program here. I am writing a Java program where in machine 1, demo.java. And I give this program to the compiler. The compiler will generate what? .class file. What does your .class file contain? Special Java language instructions. They'll contain what? Special Java language instructions. This special Java language instructions will not be understood by the processor of your machine 1. Then what we do? We give this .class file to whom? JVM. What will JVM do? The JVM will take your .class file, read all these instructions, understand them, convert them, and then give it to machine 1 understandable format. Convert to machine 1 understandable format. I execute the code, I get the output. After I get the output, I take this particular .class file. This is .class file, right? To machine 2. And to execute the code, here also I require a JVM. In machine 2 also I require a JVM. So what I do, I give the .class file to my JVM. JVM will again take the .class file, read this particular instructions, understand them, convert them to machine 2 understandable format. Execute the code. Machine 3 also, JVM will convert to machine 3 format, execute. In machine 4, JVM will convert to machine 4 format, execute. Machine 5, JVM will convert to machine 5 format and execute. In which machine you are executing, JVM is going to convert to that particular format and do the execution. JVM is going to do that execution. Am I clear here? Without compiling your program, without recompiling your program, you are able to execute your Java program on any machine in the world with the help of JVM. If JVM is not there, then it would not be possible. Now, the execution of Java program is not based on the machine you compile. You compile the Java program where? In machine 1, and you're able to execute in what? Machine 1, machine 2, machine 3, machine 4, machine 10. Everywhere you're able to execute there. And this is what you call machine independent language, platform independent language, architecture neutral language. You can execute your Java program on any machine in the world. That is what you call machine independent language. The C language story, why it is dependent, and the Java language story, why it is independent. These 2 points you have to remember up with respect to Java. Compilation step, execution step. Am I clear, dear? Try to recollect these points and come back. We'll discuss tomorrow with some more points. Do you have any queries, dear? So we'll continue tomorrow morning. See you tomorrow morning, dear. Thank you.